Hello and welcome to the EIC Clearly podcast. EIC Clearly? See what I did there? This is the podcast that brings you in-depth discussions with energy, policy and thought leaders on the most critical issues, trends and innovations shaping the global energy supply chain. Hi everybody, it's Stuart Broadley here from the EIC and welcome to another EIC Clearly podcast. I'm actually in Houston with good friend, EIC board member, and long-term expert in all things trade and immigration, James Prappas. Hi James, how are you doing?
Hi Stuart, thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you here today.
It's great to see you, and I think you've got a great broadcast voice, by the way. I can already tell you have.
Well, I've done radio for going back 35 years. I was in a weekly radio program on a local Spanish-speaking station.
So I've got competition here for Broadcast Voice of the Year, have I?
Not at all.
We'll keep working on it. So a little bit about James then. He has over 30 years experience representing businesses, families and individuals concerning employment-based immigration. So a long background in immigration law, family-based immigration, naturalization matters. So that's how he came into contact with us. But now he is what's called a member of Dykema, which I think in my normal parlance would be a partner. But it's not a partner, is it?
Well, we are a limited liability company, and a member is akin to a partner. This year is our 100th anniversary. We started originally in Detroit, but we now have 13 offices, including 4 in Texas.
And this is a full-service legal firm?
Yes, we're a member of the AmLaw 200. I believe we're the 153rd largest firm in the United States.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today, of course, is you are born in Houston, but you're a GlobalScot, which people listening will be like, how can that be? So maybe you can explain that. You've got very good understanding, of course, of what it's like to do business here successfully in the US, particularly here in Texas. You have very close ties to the UK, so we could talk about UK, US and how that relationship's going forward. We're going to talk about all sorts of other things linked to just what's it like to be a successful business here in Texas. I can't think of anybody better to have that conversation than with you, James. So let's start, though, with your long association with EIC. When did it start?
I was first introduced to the EIC in 1997. I went and gave a presentation to EIC member companies back when their offices were in Notting Hill, when Di Somerville Jones was the EIC CEO. I spoke to about 15 companies that were considering coming to the U.S. market when the EIC had their office here. And out of those 15 companies, I believe I ended up representing 4 or 5 of them, including one where they sent out an initial director of the parent company in Wales, and that company ended up 20 years later being sold to a PLC-listed company on the London Stock Exchange. Interesting thing about this company was, rather than sending out a junior person, they sent out one of the 4 directors, and he had skin in the game and was here long-term. In fact, he ended up becoming a U.S. citizen and staying here, and his children and all the family lives here now. And one of the things I think is really important when British companies come to the U.S. market, they need to send a decision maker, not a junior that has to call back to get permission to buy a box of pencils. Because if you have to do that every time, you can't make decisions on the fly and get things done.
Do you think British people come to Texas and they feel a bit intimidated by the different cultural styles of the way business is done? People from the UK turn up here and they've not sent the right person and they don't have the right attitude.
Well, I think it's more longer term than that. Is the immigrant story is individuals come to the U.S. and they never have an intention to stay. Then they're here for a while, their spouse likes it, their children may be born here, they have an attachment to the local community, then they decide they want to stay. I mean, we speak the same language at the U.S. and the U.K., but we're one nation divided by a common language. And business styles and practices and how things are done or change. One of my favorite examples about how business is done is by a fellow by the name of Derek Blackwood. And Derek always says when you come to see a client in the U.S., you stop and buy a box of kolaches and you take them with them when you go to the office so you can talk to them and you can break bread and you show you know a bit of the local culture.
I know Derek very well. I used to work with him in Wood Group, and actually on my flight to Houston this trip, he was on the same plane as me, so I saw him. It was very nice to see him. I hadn't seen him for like 25 years. So you studied in the UK, right?
I did. I went to graduate school at the London School of Economics from 1980 to 1982, where I was in the MSc Economics degree course. But my relationship to the UK predates that, in that in 1941, my father, when he was 19 years old, signed up for the Army and was on the Queen Mary to the UK and went to Glasgow. And the next stop after that was Omaha Beach. And fortunately, he survived being part of the Third Army. And of course, I'm here today.
Wow. This is a quote of yours. From the experiences of my immigrant grandparents, I gained a deep appreciation for how a successful journey can change the trajectory of lives. And conversely, how roadblocks or setbacks can cause trepidation, anxiety, and dashed hopes. And this was a quote in the context of why you chose to become an immigration lawyer. Do you want to explain a bit about this kind of why this idea of your roots and how that's impacted what you do today still matters to you?
Well, it matters to me because I get to travel vicariously through my clients, and I'm their guide through the labyrinth and on their journey to America. What makes the American experience different is it is the melting pot, and we have the best and the brightest, and we have individuals from all over the world, and we make great music together. Houston is the perfect example of that, and the energy industry is a reflection of that. There are people, the best and the brightest from all over the world. They have a good idea, a good mousetrap, and they're willing to work hard and to strive to make something for themselves, their families, and their careers. And they are all in. And in the energy industry, they look at folks, they don't care where you're from, where you're educated, but if you have a good idea, you're willing to work hard, the sky's the limit.
There is this huge scope of what's possible. But in the end, the perception of people about what it's like to do business in America successfully is it's all about money, and it's all about there's got to be a positive business return for the American company that you're doing a deal with, whereas other countries sometimes would take a different view, which is, yes, of course, there's got to be money involved, but maybe also perhaps we want to achieve an emission reduction target, or maybe we want to have some kind of longer-term partnership where the money follows later. Is that a correct perception that money is all that matters when you're doing business in the US or particularly in Texas, or is that just a British bias?
Money matters, but it's the integrity of the relationship, and do both parties win? If it's not win-win for both, I mean, there's always leverage and strategy in a particular deal, but if it doesn't benefit both parties, there'll be a winner and a loser, and things can't grow. The U.S. market is intimidating just by the sheer scope. Houston in 1950 had 250,000 people. Today, Houston is the fourth largest city in America, and 4 of the 20 largest cities in America are in Texas. Geographically, I mean, Houston is huge. You can spend all of your day just going from A to B for different parts of the city. We have the port with all the petrochemical industry. We have the E&P companies. We have the service companies. It's challenging, but it's like an elephant. You can only eat one bite at a time, and you have to understand the market and know where you're going.
And know the right people, like you, James.
Well, and have the right connections. I meet people that are a force multiplier and try to take the expression, a friend of my friend is your friend. And good things happen in life face to face. Technology's been wonderful. We have Teams meeting. You can meet people. But there's nothing like meeting somebody and breaking bread and looking in their eyes and say, well, I like this person, this gal or guy, and see if you can do something with them.
Yeah.
And it takes time. I mean, an American comes to the office, they sit down, and they'll bare their soul in 5 minutes. With a British company and an individual, it takes time. There's a dance to see, well, do I trust them? Do we have something in common? Are there some synergies? It's a bit of a longer play.
And you're a GlobalScot, this idea of longer play and picking the people that you like to work with and building long-term trust so there is win-win, but also there's business benefit quickly. How did you end up becoming a GlobalScot? And does this come from this idea of business opportunity and working with the right people?
Well, my initial involvement in Scotland was when I first started practicing law. I was involved in the British American Business Council, and I met a fellow who was the trade officer at the British consulate by the name of Bob Klepek. And Bob looked at me, and I was very young, had lots of piss and vinegar. And Bob said, well, if you go to talk to all the large English or British companies, they're going to look at you and they're going to pat you on the head, says, good boy, like a dog patting him on the head, but you're not going to get anything. But if you go talk to the Scots, they'll appreciate your enthusiasm and willingness to roll up your sleeves and just buck it out and get there and be persistent. And they'll view that as an attribute and a positive, and they'll encourage you to stay with it. And that kind of started. The first time I went to Scotland was in 1997. I went initially to London, where I had my meeting with the EIC, and then I went to Aberdeen, and I had an acquaintance that I had met through the Houston Gramping Association, and I stayed at a hotel, the Mark Laffitte Potfodals. And I remember when I went there, I think I knew 2 people, and I ended up looking in the phone book trying to find people to call, and I made an appointment to go to Paul and Williamson, which is now Burness Paul. And I remember going to their office when it was on Charlotte Square, and I was sitting in a large conference room. There were about 14 people. The managing partner at the time was Sid Berry, and they kind of looked at me, and I thought, here's this young American, doesn't know boo about Scotland or the UK, but he's here and he's trying to sell his wares, so perhaps we'll listen to him for a bit. Well, you have to be persistent, and in many ways, doing international business is being like a bowling pin. You get knocked down, you pop back up. You have to get knocked down many times, and things happen, and you learn more from your mistakes than your successes. Now, in business, of course, you have to have capital, and back then I had my own practice, and when you're spending your own money, you become much more efficient in terms of how you do things. And it was fun, and I like traveling and meeting people, and people can see your enthusiasm. It's contagious, and it's easy to talk, but it's hard to listen. And when you're dealing with clients from another culture or country, you can have the world's greatest widget, but you have to listen to them carefully to see what they want, what their needs are, what their interests, because if you're not listening or tuned in to what they want to do and what they're trying to achieve, their fears, their worries, their goals and expectations, you're not going to get there, and you're not going to develop a partnership where you can really help them.
So, of course, the GlobalScots, for those people listening in that don't know what that is, so the Scottish Government's trade arm, which is called SDI, Scottish Development International, they appoint a few business leaders that are seen as real export champions and international trade champions, and they give them this GlobalScot status. They run it as a network, so they provide them with a number of benefits of helping each other out, sharing experiences, but of course their real job is to help other businesses to do more trade in the countries or the technologies or the businesses that they're very active in. So I don't think there are many other Houstonians that are GlobalScots. Are you the only one?
No, they recently had a meeting about a month ago, and in Texas, I think there's approximately 60 GlobalScots, and I think in the greater Houston area, there are about 25 or 30.
But you were the first, I bet.
Well, I feel a very odd pedigree in that I'm of Greek extraction, I'm a Houstonian, I'm a Texan, and I don't have any family tree or tie back to Scotland. I used to say before the Queen passed that my 3 favorite women in the world were the Queen, my wife, and my daughter, because the Queen and the ladies, they bring home the bacon. Now, of course, we have to change that to the ladies and gentlemen, but all good things happen because the women are in charge.
If you're enjoying this podcast and think you have an inspiring story to tell, contact me, Stuart Broadley, directly, as I would love to do a C-level podcast with you too. EIC is proud to be the UK's largest membership energy trade association and the 5th largest in the world. We are unique around the world for 3 reasons. We are truly energy agnostic, believing all energy technologies are vital to delivering energy security, affordability and a just transition. We are the only energy trade association anywhere in the world that offers a truly in-house one-stop shop for market intelligence, networks and events to help our members export, diversify and grow. And we are proud to be the voice of the energy supply chain, advocating for the 5 golden rules of a healthy energy supply chain. More details on EIC membership, the 5 golden rules, details about doing a future podcast with me, and how to contact us about anything else are in the description for this podcast.
So let's talk about Texas then, which is where your Dykema is based and where you live and were born. So we're sitting here in Houston, of course. So there's some really incredible stats about what Texas is doing, which I don't think most people know. So if it was an independent nation, it would rank as the 8th largest economy in the world. So larger than Canada, larger than South Korea and Italy. It's about the same as the UK, actually, in GDP terms, which is $2.9 trillion. It's got a fast growth rate. Its economy is growing at 2.5%. So that's in 2025. Its labor market is incredible. So it added 112,000 jobs between January 25 and January 26. So it's leading all other states in that job growth. Total workforce of 15.9 million. It's a pretty low unemployment, only around 4.3%. It's the number 1 exporting state of the US and has been so for 23 consecutive years, which is quite incredible. Exports exceeding $440 billion each year. Its manufacturing industry is surging right now, with output growth accelerating to the point that the state now is responsible for 9% of all manufactured goods in the US. Of course, it's well known for oil and gas and still leads the way in the US for its oil and gas industry, which the $140 billion worth is oil and gas. And if you then add in petroleum and other hydrocarbon products, then actually it's more than $200 billion is energy related. And then the second major sector here is computers and electronic parts, and then, of course, now increasingly data centers. It's also seen as a major corporate hub, and it has over 310 corporate headquarters here, including Tesla, Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and Dell. And finally, it has a record 500,000 new business applications. So for entrepreneurs starting up new businesses in 2024, supported by a state policy of no personal income tax.
Texas has one of the most dynamic economies because of the way regulatory practices work. We don't have a state income tax, but we have what's called a franchise tax. The regulatory and tax burden of doing business in Texas makes it one of the premier markets in the U.S. Because if you look at all the companies coming from different parts of the U.S. to reincorporate and have their operations in Texas, we now have what's called the Texas Business Courts, and we're trying to make it as user-friendly as possible. The U.S. market is a very complex area or country to do business in versus 25 years ago. I remember when I first started practicing, I could incorporate a company and do an L1 visa and do all the professional fees and expenses for $5,000, and that was a very high fee. Today, things are much more complicated, and the regulatory burden is increased, but the opportunities are here, and it merits the energy to get things done. Texas is ground zero in the energy industry. We have classic energy, oil and gas. We have nuclear. We have wind, solar. It's all here. If energy decisions are made globally, there is a Houston component. That's why all the four majors have their operations here. And it just goes on and on. And the British businesses that are here, they've excelled. They've taken a long term. I believe there are more Scots in Texas than anywhere outside of Scotland in the world. If you go to the Alamo, which is in San Antonio, Texas, they have the Six Flags over Texas. There were more Scots killed at the Alamo than Americans. And if you look at all the counties in Texas, more counties are named after Scottish and English individuals than Americans. Harris County, where we sit right now, is named after a Scot.
It's amazing, isn't it, to look at the sort of long-term cultural links between the UK and the US, particularly between Scotland and the US, and particularly Scotland and Texas, as you say.
And in fact, the state of Texas has recently opened an economic office in London to try to capture more British businesses to come to Texas to open their offices and allow the Texas growth story to benefit them.
So let's talk about that then. So for businesses around the world, and okay, here we're talking about British businesses looking at the US, but really this applies to any business looking to work in the US. What do you think is the world's perception right now of how easy or difficult it is to come to the US, to set up a business, to be successful here?
It's a multifaceted project. You've got the business side, the legal side, insurance, health insurance, and the like. It's very easy to set a business up in Texas. You can set up a company in one day. You file everything electronically, and within a week, you'll have your registration done, and it's relatively straightforward. It can be easy. The challenge there, if you will, is to look at the tax structure to maximize tax efficiency and regulatory burden. Then you have all the logistics in terms of the business, getting an office, health insurance, liability insurance, which oftentimes scares companies away because they're worried about being involved in litigation. But litigation is a fact of life anywhere in the world, maybe a bit more so here. Immigration, that's more complicated. All you have to do is look at the front page of any U.S. newspaper every day, and you're going to see a story. You can talk about the negative all you want, but the process works. The laws are on the books. You just have to be patient and plan. Planning trumps everything. Pardon the analogy, but no, planning wins. And if you do have good planning and good advisors and sufficient capital, you'll get there. Oftentimes it takes time. And the U.S. history, it's the ebb and flow of the relaxing of immigration and the tightening of immigration. You can't time the market. Many times I've seen companies come here, I tell them, if you don't know who you're going to talk to and who your clients are, you're going to waste 6 months or a year and spend all that money and not achieve sales. You need to know before you get here who you want to talk to, who your clients and customers are to maximize your opportunities.
Let's go back to the work of Dykema just briefly now. So what's the biggest market for a legal firm right now, a full-service firm like Dykema? So this is this huge economy, as I laid out earlier. It's a real energy center, as you laid out, but it's also a technology center. It's a data center. So where are you seeing the biggest opportunities as a law firm?
Well, interestingly, our law firm, this is our 100th anniversary. We have approximately 380 lawyers in 13 cities from California to Washington, Michigan. We have the most lawyers in our firm in Texas. We have 160 lawyers in Texas, Austin, Dallas, San Antonio, and Houston. The opportunities, you need to know your business. You need to know who you are. When I talk to SMEs, to be successful, you have to know who you are, who you want to be, and how you want to get there. Having a roadmap, planning. Smaller companies may have difficulties with access to capital. The opportunities are there, but to have a roadmap, have a team of trusted advisors. To enter the U.S. market, you need good legal representation. And that's not a one-stop shop either. There's IP, there's immigration, there's corporate, there's real estate, there's litigation, if you will. But then you've got insurance. You need to have product liability insurance, health insurance. You need to have marketing people. You have to do it all. It's a bit daunting for a smaller company. The complexity of doing business in the U.S. has gone up significantly.
Is data centers taking over your practice?
We have a very large data center practice in our firm nationally, and there's a lot of work there. But data centers involve all types of work. It involves IP, it involves corporate work, real estate, labor and employment. There are many components to it, and depends where you are in the food chain in terms of the data center, whether you're representing the data center, the companies that are involved in putting the data center together, whether you're buying or selling the power. We represent a very large power provider in San Antonio that's been growing, and the market's huge.
Are you seeing what commentators are talking about now, which is that the whole data center market is at risk of blowing up in terms of it being an economic bubble, a technology bubble? Or are you seeing that, no, the deals are really happening and, these facilities are being built and what is supposedly a bottleneck of energy supply and a lot of the equipment around that, whether it's gas turbines and transformers and so on, those deals are also being done. So I guess my question is, are you worried on behalf of the wider stock market that the AI bubble is going to burst?
Well, I'm conservative by nature. There's always bubbles, but I think it depends how you look at it, whether you look at it from a risk perspective or as an opportunity perspective. Good companies have strong balance sheets and they pay attention to things. There's always a potential for a bubble, but while the opportunities are there, things are growing. You look at the U.S. market and energy, all these different things keep humming along. And you only hear about the extremes when there's either a difficulty or some piece of litigation or some bad actor, but the opportunities are there. And the larger players, they're full speed ahead.
What's the best deal you've ever done?
From an immigration perspective, I think one of the most interesting stories was I had a client that was born in the United States, and when he was about 10 years old, his parents moved back to Mexico, and so he went to university, and when he was in university, he was a U.S. citizen, and he was about to graduate, and they told him that your tuition is going to go up 4 times, and his parents didn't have enough money. So I wrote a letter to the State Department in Washington, D.C., and I asked for a copy of my client's file because he had given up his U.S. citizenship to become a Mexican citizen in order to stay in university. So I wrote a letter, nothing happened. I wrote another letter, nothing happened. I called the fellow that was head of the Office of U.S. Citizenship Services in Washington, D.C., a fellow by the name of Ed Betancourt. And then about a week later, I got a letter back, and it said, "Dear Mr. Prappas, we reviewed our files, and we have been unable to locate your client's file. As such, under U.S. law, your client is still a U.S. citizen." And with that letter, my client was no longer deemed to have renounced his U.S. citizenship, and so he was a U.S. citizenship right on the spot, and we applied for his passport. That was fun.
This comes right back to where we started, though, which is what drives you as a lawyer. Ultimately, it is about helping people, right?
My tagline is, what I sell is the ultimate commodity, freedom of movement. Everybody wants to be able to come and go where they please and have opportunities. And if you have a U.S. passport, that's the golden ticket. When I see a client, I tell them, I may be helping them to get an initial L1 visa, but you need to keep your eye on the prize, and that's to become a U.S. citizen. Because assuming you obtain your citizenship lawfully, you can live anywhere in the world.
So let's ask the simple questions. You're a GlobalScot. You are on the board of EIC. You've worked between the UK and the US for decades, really trying to help businesses connect and trying to help companies to invest in the US, in the state of Texas that you believe so passionately in. What's the piece of advice ultimately that you've learned is the best advice that you can give to a company, to a business leader, to an investor when they're thinking of making their first move into Houston?
Have a plan. Do your homework. Look ahead and have it in writing. It's like the plan won't be perfect. You'll continue to refine it, but you've got to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, the market will make the plan, and the law of unintended consequences may have surprises that will either change the trajectory of your business or materially affect your ability to succeed.
So you've been doing this for more than 30 years. What does the future hold for you? Obviously for Dykema, the future is celebrating 100 years.
Well, we're having our 100th anniversary celebration in Detroit in June, and all the partners are going, or members are going to a meeting there, and we're going to have a 3-day meeting, which will be lots of fun.
What about then the future for you?
Well, I still like what I do. I still have energy in my tank. I'm planning on continuing to practice for the indefinite future. I still enjoy what I do. I like helping people, and it's nice to see people succeed. There are roadblocks in the way, but you have to view a roadblock like the bowling pin analogy I was telling you about. You get knocked down, you pop back up. And you have to tell the truth. You have to be candid with people. You can't be all things to all people. But if you have candor and you show your client that you're trying to help them get where they want, good things happen.
And I've known you now for, I guess, coming up to 10 years. And that's what you are, I think, is you are a very trustworthy, authentic, genuine. You're trying to help. And you measure success on did something happen positively. And as you say, normally for both sides, for both parties.
Well, life isn't perfect. A dear friend of mine told me that life is messy. Things happen, the unexpected. But you do your best, you tell the truth, and you try to move ahead. We learn more from our mistakes than our successes. And in business, you talk to any entrepreneur that's had success, they've learned along the way. Things take time and energy. When I began my career, I was involved in the Houston Grampian Association, and there was a wonderful individual who I met by the name of Rosemary Ryan. Rosemary was the head of the Clydesdale Bank here in Houston, and she was a representative. And I met an individual by the name of Jimmy Mill, now Sir James Mill.
Who owns the Marcliffe that you were talking about before.
And has owned Balmoral. And life's full of ups and downs, but you have to be persistent, and you're honest with people, and you're just there for the long run, and you keep plugging away.
Yeah. Well, James, thank you for plugging away so successfully and so, I think, loyally to the cause of continuing to strengthen UK-US relationships. The work you do is really great, but you're also just a lovely guy and great fun to work with. And you help me all the time at making connections as well. So thank you so much, James. It's been a pleasure.
Well, the EIC is great, and the tagline that is the Global Supply Organization, I've learned a fair bit about the EIC. The energy industry affects our quality of life, every aspect of what we do. The reason why life is so prosperous, if you will, in a material sense in the U.S. is because we have an abundant supply of energy. And the success of the global economies, and on a micro scale, these companies, is access to energy.
Yeah. And as the sirens wail away outside, I think that's a great time to say, James, thanks a lot. It's lovely to see you. And I will see you again soon. All the best. Enjoy your 100 years celebration.
Thank you, Stuart. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I hope folks find this interesting to listen to.
I'm sure they will. All the best. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, that's our show for today. A huge shout out to Samara, Lucas and Joao and the rest of our incredible team behind the scenes. This show truly wouldn't happen without them. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean the world if you'd hit that follow button. Give a 5-star rating or leave a review. It's the best way to help us keep doing what we love. And as a thank you, I'll leave you with my favourite 5-word joke. Love wind power. Big fan.